So last time we looked at primitive functions, um, and I was looking at this code and I was thinking, this is a little bit like much to have in a single method. It would be nice if we could like split this part out somehow, so I could do it for any sort of like name, age, and is old that we pass through. Um, so now from those primitive functions, we can define our own functions. Um, So now I've defined a function here called print old, and I'm going to take a name, bring an age, int, and an is old. So if I want to do this I want to do this repeatedly for any old name that I get passed through, or for any old like group of these things that I get passed through. So I'm going to take this, we're going to move it down here, and we're just going to, whoops, there we go. Let's add the age in here for good measure. Um, so let's say is old at, oops, and we'll do plus age. So now we can say, okay, we can call this print old function from our main method, our entry point. We can pass in this name, the age, and is old. So if we pass this in, see, Tom is old over and over again. We keep repeating because this um, while loop is still set to true. So okay, that was cool. Now we can do this for any name, age, and is old that we pass through. But this is a bit clunky because we don't really want to pass these things in separately because my name is always going to be bound to my age, which is always going to be bound to my is old value. So let's say here we want to bundle these things together. And the way we do that in code is by defining a class. Um, in other languages, this is defined as a struct or a structure. This is basically just a template of like the type of values that we want to pass through. Or we want this to represent, I guess. Um, so okay, now we have this. Um, and with this thing, we can now define a value of Tom, which is me. Um, we can say, okay, I want to pass in a name, Tom. I want to pass in an age of 24. We want to pass in is old of true. Okay, cool. So now we have this instead of these three things, so I can get rid of these. And this also can make our function a lot simpler because now we have defined our own type. We don't need to use this very basic um, type anymore. So we can say, okay, instead of print old with this stuff, we can call it with Tom. Single line. Okay, so now we come down to our function. We say, oh, these values we now need to access through this object, which is what this is called. So this is the type or like schema for these values, and this is a specific instance of that is called an object. So I could declare another object here, for like val Brandon, and he could be a different person. Oops, he's 23, and he is not old. So we now have two separate objects that are both of this type or follow this schema. Anyway, back down here. Now we can continue accessing these values through now we can see, okay, so this all looks good. There's no red in the ID, which is very nice, always a good thing to see. And now we can call print old on Brandon as well. So we've just made it so we can collapse all of these different definitions and like method calls into a single thing. So now if we call this, I'm just gonna exit it early. But if we go up to the top here, we see. Whoop, well, it cut off the output, but for Brandon, I'm gonna do a little cheat here so we can see the output correctly. We see for Brandon, it said, okay, for Brandon, this value is false. So we say Brandon is not old, and then this was false for Brandon, so we did not print this. But for me, we said, okay, I am old at 24, and we did, since this is true for me, we did Tom is old. And then this is a break statement, which essentially breaks this loop and allows the program to finish. But yeah, that's sort of how you take data. You take different data that looks the same and you fit it into a under one sort of schema and what advantages that provides.